Hey, what's up, guys? Winter finally got here, as you can tell by the familiar sweater to some of you. I've got a bird here that was worked on by Max, and it's just got the full auto chip mod. I figured I'd do a video on it for those of you who buy these things off of eBay, because usually there's something wrong with them when you get them off of eBay. But usually it's nothing big. These guns are pretty simple to work on and figure out, run down what the problem is in a stock configuration. So this one, it's got the full auto mod, some other things done to it. It's got some rails on it and whatnot. It does have BB centering, a magnet mod, maybe two magnet mods up there in the valve body. We'll get into that in a minute. The guy's complaint was that it's just dribbling BBs out of the barrel, which is a pretty common problem with them in the stock configuration. So I just thought that this would help you guys that are shooting stock guns or near to stock guns. As most of you already know, you're more than welcome to email me and ask me what's going on with it. I'm more than happy to help you troubleshoot it. I rarely get guns like this in, because most of the time we can figure out what's going on with your gun on your end, and you don't even have to send it to me. So let's get into this. I didn't even bother to shoot this beforehand because he said it had a leak somewhere else in it, and we'll find that. But as you can see, there's been an issue with the power cord. What often happens is where the cord comes out of the magazine, right there, it'll break. A lot of the times you can see the break in the insulation, but sometimes the wire inside the insulation will break. What I like to do is make these as short as I can, which would be about that long. So there's not a lot of play in it. And the longer your wire is, the more you're going to lose in heat energy instead of mechanical energy that this motor is trying to put out. Okay, so we've got a couple of issues here. This is your motor, and it turns this gear up here, which in turn turns that spring. It doesn't have to turn that whole metal shaft. It just needs to turn the spring to move BBs. And this is the clutch. We'll get a little bit better look at that. Now I'm going to hold on to this cog part, and the way this works is the gear will turn independent of that with the right grip on it, of course. There we go. So that's spinning, and this plate has a keyway cut into it. Let me get this off. Put you down for a second. So this nut comes off. That paint is just to keep the nut from spinning. Some guns I've seen, right from the factory, they don't have that paint there, so this nut is just free to spin. And often this pinion gear is also glued on there. Well, often that pinion gear is not even glued on. That's not too big of an issue because the housing sits pretty close up to it. I'm not sure if it can slide off all the way, but these are just some things to look for when you take it down. That does need to be glued on there, and there needs to be something here keeping your nut from spinning once you get the right tension. Now, if we look here, there's a flat spot on this spindle, and that flat spot corresponds with this hole. And so that, if you get this on here, down to a certain point, you can't turn it anymore. It is locked to that shaft because of that keyway, I guess we would call it. So that's what allows it to spin, the clutch to spin independent of what we're pressing down onto it. Now, this one, I took it apart, and I don't really work on these a lot, and it felt very easy to turn, but I'm used to a lot more tension than that, which isn't required for 1,200 rounds a minute. But it was spinning very easily. So what happens after a while, they usually come with some white lithium grease as a clutch lubricant there. And this looks like it's in excellent shape. But there's three little lobes, 1, 2, 3, that ride on this outer surface. So we might run that on a sharpening stone just to kind of rough it up a little bit. I think we'll do that. Just take off the bare minimum material to just plane it off and rough it up slightly to get a little more friction out of this without changing our clutch spring, because we don't need anything bigger than that for what we're trying to accomplish. Now, something else, when the motor's turning the clutch and it pushes BBs up here, and this magnet is not something from the factory. This is something that Ray put in there, and as you can see, it holds BBs. Now what this is actually meant to help with is BB rollout. But what can happen is if your clutch is really loose, it can actually, this magnet can fight your clutch, and it can have issues getting beyond that magnet. And there's some vents here also, and there's so you can, every time you fire, gas will come down here and push on these BBs. So if your BB is not in battery, I can't remember how far down. I think it's to the bottom of the valve body, so that's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 BBs, that it'll venturi out of there without them being in battery, and that will cause a low velocity to your shots. And oops, I heard something go boing. And this set screw for BB centering, we'll just go into another couple more reasons I don't like it, but that can also cause problems because it can wear, and it can also lead to facilitating BB rollout. I think first we're going to find our leak, and we're going to do that just by taking this whole assembly out and putting some pressure to it. You can do this with your paintball hose or CO2 if you have it. If you can't find it right off the hop, you might want to dunk this in some water, but we'll just go plug it up to the nitrogen and see. Oh, it's funny. Somebody asked the guy with the Blackbird on eBay for sale if it actually had Sergey's board, and he was pretty emphatic that yeah, it has the first generation Sergey's board in it. So between me and Ronald and Sergey, we all got a good laugh out of that. Okay, I don't hear any leaks. Now, come to think of it, he just said he felt it on his hand when he was shooting. So thinking about that a little bit more, we don't have a leak. If you feel it on your hand, it's because you're having excessive gas blow out of here through those vents we were talking about, and down and out the around the magazine well. So sounds like he just didn't have them in battery, and he was probably just Venturiing the BBs out without any ass behind him. Well, somehow from between here and the back room and coming back, I lost my tripod and I can't find it. I hate it when that happens. So we're gonna have to modify and just do this peg-legged. I want to check out the seals just in case. And these seals, that just pulls off. They look like they're in great shape. We'll just clean this off and put some silicone grease, pack it in around those, and then put our monofold back on. I don't remember if I mentioned silicone grease, but just for safety's sake, that's what I use. The silicone grease, diver's grease, as long as it does not contain petroleum distillates, you'll be okay. Just don't forget to clean all the surfaces off nice and good before you do this, before you put grease. Pack the grease in both sides of each seal. And there is a bevel, which will be on the screw side, set screw side, of here. Not on this side, on that side. And that's the side you want to put it in on. You can make it work getting it in on the other side, but you can tear your seal. But if you really didn't like looking at that set screw, that's an option. Now we're going to get in there. We're going to take that adapter out. Some of these adapters can be really stuck in there. I've gone over this before, but while I'm doing it, I'll say it again. They just need to be hand tight. I'll show you where the seal is in there. There's also a filter behind that slot. That is a little slotted cap that you can remove and take the filter out, clean it, throw it away, leave the cap out. Whatever you want to do. Port this intake in there to give you more gas. I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're on CO2 though. And you have to change some other things around, some other settings like solenoid when you do that. But we're not going to get into that on this one. Now the seal, you see the slotted cap, and then there's that ridge around it, the shiny ridge around it. The seal is just above that on the inner diameter. And no, I'm sorry, that is the seal. And it just butts up to that. That's why you only need it hand tight, because the pressure pushes it out against the wall and this wall. So we're going to wipe this down, put some grease on it, stick it back together. One more thing, don't forget to make sure that set screw is loose before you try to take anything out of there. Now we're going to get into the valve body, and it just screws off. There's another seal right under there. And while we're talking about valve bodies, I was looking for the first one I got from Drawsmax, and back then he was doing another magnetic mod where he would drill into the side of it right about there I think it was, and he would press a magnet in there, and it did the similar purpose of having the magnet on the air tube. So if you do have that, it's kind of hard to see. It's kind of hard to tell, but it'd be right there, and you'll have a magnet stick to it. I couldn't find that valve body, but I did run across this one, which is kind of neat. This is actually Mike Tong's valve body that he recorded the first speed record with. I think it was like 970 feet per second. So as far as I know, that is the first recorded record speed from one of these Blackbirds, and it was done with this valve body. It's always kind of interesting to try to glean the thought processes of the person who was working on something. And he doesn't speak very good English, and it's been a long time since I spoke to him. But you can see he ported that out. It looks like he ported it a little too much out and blew that out of it. I think he was trying to get a tighter fit in there to get more velocity out of it, because that was one of the ideas, is if you constricted that, you could get more velocity. And I haven't really found any gain from that. And if you look, you can see that epoxy or whatever it is at kind of an angle, and that tells me that this valve body was one of the ones that kind of sits at an angle because the hole in the air tube wasn't drilled properly, and that had caused it to sit canted that way a little bit, and you can't hit your valve straight on with these valve bodies, which is not really a good thing, because you want to be hitting it directly and not striking it at an angle for pretty obvious purposes if you think about it. Anyway, here is our valve and how it goes together. Now this gun has over 100,000 rounds through it. So, and just taking a look at it, normally you would see an indentation that bends it in about like that. That's just normal once you get to shooting these things. I'm not 100% sure how it gets there, but I think it gets there because it hits the BB that's below the one that's being fired, it hits the top of it. And since there's no damage at all to this, that tells me that that clutch was so loose that it probably hadn't ever worked right. So this is what normally goes bad if you have a leak and you've done your leak test and it's not leaking from here. If it's not leaking from here, it's not that seal. These ones don't really normally leak. This is the seal that normally leaks because your valve rides in and out of that. I'm just going to go ahead and replace this seal. That's normally what I do whenever anyone comes in for any reason. It doesn't look terribly bad, but we're just going to put a new one in there anyway. And then there's another seal. This seal would be the second likeliest to leak. And as far as that and those seals, those aren't really an exact science, and neither is the one in here. If I have one that's leaking, I will just put O-rings in it from one of these 144, 355 piece kits you can get at an auto parts store. Speaking of auto parts stores, if you can't find silicone-based grease easily, you can also pick it up at your parts store in this little packets about that big, like green or something, and it's called bulb grease. It's just silicone grease, just a dielectric grease. So when we put this back together, we're going to change that out. And also, this is one of those where Ray actually pressed a magnet in the underside of that set screw, and this guy said that he could not get that set screw out. I wanted him to do that if he could before he sent it, but we're going to poke that BB out and take a look at the what kind of shape that magnet's in. You can also see from the BB centering where the bottom right there, BBs have been slamming into that, coming out of there because it's pressed out a little bit. That's no good. We might give them a new valve body. I don't know. And there's our magnet. It looks like it's in pretty good shape, but we do want to check out if that indentation has caused or is causing damage to the barrel breech. I've gone ahead and put my magazine in here to do this because you want a magazine in there when you do this, because the valve body locks into the barrel nut, and if you don't have it locked into the barrel nut and the barrel is hard to get off, it can spin the barrel nut out of the polymer rail that holds it into position. You also want to have your magazine in whenever you retighten the barrel, so you make sure that your barrel nut is in the correct position. Now with these Drawsmax barrels, this end nut just unscrews, the shroud comes off, and then there is a bushing right in here that goes between the barrel and the shroud. And when you loosen this nut, these two halves of the gun are going to become loose because this nut actually holds both of these halves together. So if you have a vise, another hand or something, you want to have this up like that, not really wiggling around. If you do have it wiggling around a lot or without a magazine in it, your valve, your barrel nut's going to fall off, and there's two washers, two shims that go between your, they go around the breech between the frame and the barrel nut, and they can be tricky to get back on. And once you have your nut, your shroud, and your bushing off, you can unscrew this. And here is our barrel. We're just checking the breech for any damage. Let me wipe that off. And I don't really see that one little shiny spot? But I don't see where the valve body's causing any damage. And you'll also know when you're unscrewing the barrel, because if you've had a BB slamming into the corner of this, it'll mushroom it inside your nut, and it'll be very hard to get off, and sometimes you'll break these threads clean off. Alrighty, while we're in here, we are going to take a look at the barrel nut, and to get to that, we want to spread it apart a little bit. You could probably just shake it and it would come out through the handle, but we're going to go this route. Spread it apart a little bit, and the solenoid cover comes off by picking up on that part of it at the front, then sliding it off. And sometimes you have to bring your rear sight up to get the solenoid off, like in this case. So we're just going to leave it like that. Okay, here's or 2 shims and a barrel nut. I just wanted to look at the barrel seal right in there, and I can offer the customer a Magnus Op seal at this point. That would involve replacing that and putting a couple of pieces of Gorilla Tape in here to help align things, but I think he wants to keep it pretty simple. He's not getting a lot of use out of that barrel seal because you can see it's quite flat, and that's also going to add to the air that he's feeling coming out of this. So he might go for having me install the Magnus Op seal. So yeah, that's pretty much worn out. Oh, and some people think that this is an aftermarket seal with it somewhat triangular shape. No, they come from the factory like this. They thought that maybe they were for reducing the velocity because it let air pass. Nope, that's not how they work. Those little tabs are just to prevent BB rollout, actually, which is what the customer is experiencing. And the Magnus Op seal, it is a slightly smaller diameter than the BB when compressed, so it also prevents that. So I'll run that by him, and I'll probably end up putting the Magnus Op seal in there. So there's more than one thing that can cause a BB rollout, but I'll show you what I'm talking about with this worn out seal. Okay, it's his seal, and here's a new one. So hard to do stuff with one hand. Anyway, it can't go through there unless you push it with some air. And it just goes right through that one. I'll give you a close-up picture. All right, it is a couple days later. It's Monday, and I did a few things off camera. I made this to run 3 14-500s instead of the double A's that he was running, so now he'll be able to use 3 of those and will never have to buy any more double A's for this. He'll also get more power out of it. I got to talking with him over the weekend, and remember how we talked about this valve and how it was, basically pristine. Well, that was because he's never run this gun off of air in spite of having this air adapter. So I think now what I'm going to do, I'll also put a Magnus Op seal in the barrel nut. So I have to go ahead and finish installing that and do the rest of the stuff in here, as well as adjust the solenoid, because I can do that now that I know that he's going to be running air. And I've got videos on all that other stuff, so I'll save you the time of that. Before we put this back together, I wanted to show you that you can take that E-clip off, and then this spindle will come out. You can clean and lubricate it. I've just roughed this up a little bit just to get a new surface on it, and we'll put that back together and see how it goes. And it's easy to forget that this surface is also part of the pressure because it gets squeezed between the clutch plate and the E-clip. It also spins on the E-clip. You also notice the depression in the clutch gear. That is for packing in grease under the clutch plate. So you have your clutch plate back on, you clear away any excess grease. Now what we want to do is clean our threads really good with a solvent like alcohol, or I'm going to use acetone because I can't find any alcohol right now, but I want to clean those threads. And I'm also going to clean the female threads on our nut and stick it back together. I'm also going to shorten this abortion cord and get the magazine back together. I forgot to mention that we use some semi-permanent Loctite to get that back on, and that'll allow you to tighten it or loosen it. But I just put it on, well, maybe 2 threads tighter than it was before, and I manipulated it, and it feels pretty good. Before we button it up, I did want to mention this. If you get your clutch too tight, the tighter you get it, the harder it turns this spring. So if you get it too tight, what can happen is the spring can compress to the point where it doesn't return, and it's so short that it can actually come out of that cog. And if you run completely out of ammo, if you don't have this feed channel completely full, it's not going to have anything pushing on that spring, and it can pop out, and then just your cog will be turning. I don't think I addressed this BB centering with you guys Friday, but what I ended up doing was I was able to loosen it, and I reseated it with some semi-permanent Loctite over the weekend. I noticed that there's that little bulge on the outside right there, just underneath the hole, and I think that the BB centering was causing the BB to come down too hard and hit that. So it's a good thing that he wasn't shooting high pressure air, or he could have damaged his breech. Yeah, we did kind of touch on that. So I'm just going to go hook this assembly up to the air and make sure I don't have any leaks, because I put the new high flow valve in it, new front valve seal, and sometimes when you put a different valve in, they don't want to seal on the rear seat seal on the inside. And we don't have any leaks. One other tip for when you do that is, while your valve is out, make sure that you have a good coating of silicone oil on the back of the valve and on the seat seal where the valve butts up to it. And then when you put pressure to it, I like to do it with the slide check valve so it's immediate. And because you have lubrication between the lip of the valve and the valve seat seal, all that's inside here, because you have lubrication there, it allows the seal to move where it needs to get to, just right off the hop when you dump all that pressure to it. We've got one more thing to address before we get this magazine together. He's going to be shooting, he said, between 1,000 and 1,100 psi. That, combined with the extra voltage, is possibly enough to split the two halves of the magazine apart right here from jamming BBs up in there and having the pressure blow down. Now, there's a couple different ways you could do it. What I like to do is, I've got these tubes that I run up through there. That way you don't have anything on the outside that you can see. If you don't have that, what you can do is put it together. You run some small zip ties through here and just around, and that works just as well. I forgot to mention about the valve body, the BB centering. If you do happen to have one that has that little magnet that's pressed into the bottom of the set screw and the magnet is cracked or it's lost its magnetism from the heat that goes on in here, you can just replace it with a regular old set screw with a cup in the bottom of it. If you don't have a cup in the bottom of it, just flip it upside down and screw it in there. And the way I normally adjust these whenever I have to deal with them is I don't focus on centering the BB. I just have it just far up enough to where a BB can come out, and that's worked out pretty well for me. Now I had to take the solenoid out in order to get this tape that you can see in there to help press on the valve body for our Magnus Op seal. So I am going to get this back together, and I wanted to show you this also. This one fortunately has a latch plate. If you don't have a latch plate, you can make one out of a carpet knife or a razor blade, and yes, you can drill through those. Now the way these are made is there's room for you to adjust them up and down, and the important part about the important dimension that we're looking at here is these screws. These hex screws are tiny. These hex nuts, whatever you want, Allen screws, they're tiny. I don't even know what size they are. They're like 3/32 or something like that. But they need to be small to clear this pin that holds your latch in. So that's the only issue that you're looking at there if you need to fabricate one of these. So I'm going to put this in there, tighten up the barrel because I haven't done that yet, and then I'll show you what we're looking for as far as alignment. Before we get into the alignment, I'm going to go ahead and set the solenoid. Now I'll show you what it looks like first, roughly, if you're only running CO2. If you're running air, you can go ahead and adjust it closer to the valve. If you're running CO2 and stock voltage and you try to do that to get more power out of it, you just don't have enough juice in the batteries to open the valve fully, and it'll start to malfunction. So I'll show you about what it should look like for CO2 first. And what we're going to be looking for is I'm going to use my finger to push on the plunger of the solenoid without trying to touch the solenoid. What that's going to do is it's going to bottom out as far as the shaft will go, and then the shaft is going to push in the valve all the way. But this collar right here is going to come away from the frame a little bit. So that distance will give me the distance that the plunger can come out, and then when we back off of it and put the collar all the way back flush with the frame, that will give me the clearance that I need to not depress the valve all the way in or bottom out on the valve seat. So that's about where we want to be if we're just shooting CO2. Like I say, I don't ever shoot CO2, so that's more or less an educated guess on my part. Maybe out a little further, maybe in a little further, but that is an important part, because with just CO2 and stock batteries, you're not going to be able to open it up all the way. Now I'm going to adjust this for high pressure air. Since he's going to be running 12 plus volts and high pressure air, he's going to be able to open the valve all the way. So after I push on that with my index finger, I'm going to close up that gap, so I'll have more throw in the solenoid plunger. So the solenoid plunger in effect will come out further, but I don't want to get it out so far that it bottoms out on the valve seat. We just want to push that pin in. We don't want to slap the seat around it. Okay, and that's about right for the way I want this set up. And you adjust it by screwing in and out the solenoid. You can see the threads right there. And you can see the distance the collar is away from the frame. Now when I pull the whole assembly back, when I grab the solenoid, pull it back, I'm going to go over there on the other side and tighten that screw to lock everything down. And the distance you see right there will be how close it is to bottoming out on the valve seat at that point. Now with a Superbird where you're running, 25 volts and just putting a lot of juice to it, and with extreme rates of fire like 4,000 rounds a minute, 5,000 in the case of Freebird, what can happen is the solenoid can heat up and the hammer can actually expand. So you want to have some clearance for it to expand, or you'll start knocking on the bottom of that, the back of that seat, and there's a little bushing that you can knock out, and it can pop in and out, and I tell you, it'll pop right back in, and you won't know what's going on with it. So I'm gonna get this locked down, and then we'll move on. All right, we've got that tightened down. As you can see, the collet is flush with the frame, so we're going to have a little bit of clearance from the hammerhead to the valve seat. Now we've got this tape pressing this side because this hook over here torques it out with the magnet stop seal pressing on the face of the valve body. So that tape right here is giving us our horizontal alignment. Now our vertical alignment we get from our latch plate. And let's try to do this with one hand. Has anybody seen my tripod? Let me know in the comments. So we're looking for the up and down. And that is striking a little bit high. It's not too bad. I mean, we could run with that if we needed to. But if we have some adjustment left in the latch plate down here, we are going to adjust it so we're too high here. Yep, we're too high there. That means the magazine needs to come up, so our latch plate needs to come down a little bit. All right, we've got our latch plate up as far as the valve body will allow it to come up, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. And that looks like it's hitting dead center to me, so that's very good. Now, if the valve body wouldn't let it come up anymore, what I mean by that is if you're not out of adjustment on your latch plate, but if this hook over here is preventing you from going up any further, you see how the hook sits in that valve body or around it and how it's bottomed out on it right there? That's what's preventing us from going up any further. Sometimes what can happen is that you will still not be, you still might need to go up a little bit, but that is preventing you from going up any further. If it's good enough, if you're not bottoming out on any part of your hammer, I would say just leave it where it is. Because if you force it to go up all the way centered by grinding on the valve body or on your barrel nut, what happens is you put the whole valve body out of alignment with the way BBs go through it. So if you wanted to see what it looked like, what you would do is you would remove your solenoid, you would remove your valve seat and valve, and just look down the barrel. And probably even, well, you couldn't really take the valve, your your barrel seal out, you would need that in there. But you could look right clear through the entire thing to see if you could do a little bit of grinding on there. But if it's good enough, don't mess with that part of it. And before you put everything back together, it's a good idea to just go ahead and take this cover off. There's one screw right there and one screw right there. And the reason you want to do that is to tighten up this plastic rail that is always loose from the factory. I think you can even see it right there underneath these Phillips screws. On the inside there is a little nut, so you can just grab a hold of that with some needle nose pliers and go ahead and tighten these down. I think I'm gonna clean that up for him while I'm in here too. Alright guys, that's about it for this video. I think it's been plenty long enough. I just wanted to get that out there to for those who buy a Blackbird and there might be something wrong with it right off the hop, they can have this video to reference. And I don't really know what's going to happen in the next few days, but if for some reason YouTube goes down, if for some reason my channel goes down, you can always find me at the BB Machine Gun Owners Group forum. If that were to happen, I will start checking that forum on the regular. I am Perilax over there, so you can find me there, and you might want to get a pen and paper to write down my email address if you don't already have it. Alright guys, later.